You may not understand how powerful the Holy Virgin Mary is until you hear my testimony, and I encourage you to listen till the end.
My name is Prince Rashid bin Karim, and I'm 35 years old. 4 years ago, I stood before a large crowd of thousands of Muslims in Dubai and publicly mocked the Virgin Mary. I used her image and I laughed at her suffering. I called her story a fairy tale for the weak. Some days later, I collapsed to my knees at a private dinner party. 20 people watched me fall. None of them knew why, but I did. I had studied theology at Oxford, so I knew exactly what I was doing. And I believed I was serving God by doing it. What I'm about to tell you is a mistake that should not have happened. And I don't want you to make the same mistake. That's why I'm here. Everything happened on a Thursday night. It was a private dinner. I had 20 guests who were friends, business associates, and a few distant cousins. I had hosted this kind of evening events 100 times before. We were on the 40th floor of a high-rise overlooking the city. There was lamb, dates, coffee. We had our conversations between Arabic and English without struggle. I was holding a glass of hibiscus tea. Then all of a sudden my hand trembled and started shaking. I caught the glass in my hand before it fell. I looked down at my hand, confused because I didn't know what was happening. And that's when the room changed. I looked up and saw that she was there. 5 feet in front of me was the Virgin Mary. She was dressed simply. She looked so real, more real than the table in front of me, the people around me, and even more than my own hands. I really cannot explain her face. She wasn't angry. She just looked sorrowful. And that sorrow was directed at me. She didn't even speak. Her presence was the message. Before my mind could catch up, my body had already responded. My knees buckled and fell to the ground. Then I collapsed forward. I could hear everyone call me Rashid. Are you okay? Someone else was talking about calling a doctor for me. Another person was trying to lift me. But I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. Tears were streaming down my face, and I had no idea why. While all these was happening, I noticed that she disappeared. They helped me into a side room. The doctor checked my pulse and my eyes. He asked me questions, but I couldn't answer. Then he said it was stress or maybe dehydration. I nodded to agree with him so they would believe it. But I knew what I had seen. And I knew somehow that nothing would ever be the same. First, I need you to understand where I came from. I was born in a palace in Abu Dhabi. There were Quranic calligraphy everywhere on the walls with gold leaf. Every morning I woke at 4:45 to the call to prayer. My father would knock once on my door, then enter. We would walk together to the private family mosque, just the two of us, and pray. I would recite verses from memory, and he would correct my pronunciation. I was not allowed to make mistakes. Not because he was harsh, but because he believed what we were doing mattered more than anything else in the world. When it was time for breakfast, he would sit across from me and speak while I ate. One morning he told me that I will inherit wealth. But wealth is not the gift. The gift is responsibility. Allah had chosen our family to guard His truth. He said I was not born to enjoy, that it was all a test. I didn't fully understand everything he was saying yet, but I nodded because I believed him. When I was just 10 years old, an Egyptian scholar named Sheikh Ibrahim came to live with us. He was my private tutor. He taught me 6 days a week, 3 hours a day. One afternoon I asked him a question. I said, "Sheikh Ibrahim, why do Christians believe in 3 gods?" He smiled and dropped the book he was holding to answer me. "They say they don't, Rashid, but they do. They call it a mystery. But Allah does not confuse. He is one, always." He paused and continued, This is why we must remain firm. The West is powerful, but they are lost. I didn't think he was lying to me. I didn't think he was trying to brainwash me. He was teaching me what he believed to be true. And so, I trusted him. Islam, as I learned it, wasn't oppressive. It was both rational and dignified. It made sense to me. And everything outside of it, especially Christianity, seemed confused and dangerous. When I was now 15, my father hosted a private gathering in our majlis. He invited senior officials and religious scholars. They were men whose names carried weight. I was allowed to sit in a corner and listen to them. The topic that night was conversions. Muslim youth in the Gulf leaving Islam for Christianity. One scholar said something like, "They are not coming as priests anymore. They come as professionals, offering jobs, humanitarian work, friendship." Another person also said, "We are losing children of good families, and this is treason." My father let them speak before he leaned forward and said, "Then we do not wait. We educate. We inoculate. We teach our sons to recognize the disease before it spreads." He looked across the room, directly at me, and said, "You will study them, my son, not to become them, but to defeat them." Then I realized that I was being prepared, not as a scholar, but as a defender. Then I became 22 and was sent to Oxford to study political science and Islamic studies. My father's plan was working exactly as he intended it to. I excelled. My professors respected me. But I never forgot why I was there. One evening, I attended a Christian Union meeting, because I needed to understand their methods. I sat in the back and took notes, but I said nothing. A British student in the gathering stood up and shared the gospel. He spoke about grace and forgiveness, about a God who loved unconditionally. People around me were nodding. Some had tears in their eyes. I wrote down something in my notebook like emotionalism and weak theology. Later that term, I wrote a paper and titled it Political Utility of Trinitarian Theology in Western Imperial Expansion. It received high marks from my professors. That same night, when I was alone in my room, I prayed, "Allah, I see their methods. I will not be deceived. Use me as a shield for the Ummah." By the time I was 27, I was back in Dubai. And I had a plan. I founded an organization called Warriors of Islamic Faith. It was a training institute. We had offices in a modern building downtown. I was invited to speak at mosques, universities, and government events. My father attended one of my talks, and when we were done, he embraced me and said, "You are doing what I prayed you would do." I felt powerful. Christians were no longer people to me. They were obstacles, systems to be exposed, threats to be neutralized. I didn't see it that way at the time. I thought I was protecting my people. But looking back, I had stopped seeing them as human. When I became 32, a woman came to see me. She was an Emirati mother. We met at a quiet cafe in Dubai. She was veiled and began weeping. Her 19-year-old daughter had converted to Christianity and fled to Europe. She showed me photos on her phone. The daughter was indeed a young woman, wearing hijab in some pictures, and stopped wearing it in others. The mother complained bitterly about how she used to pray and fast until she met a Christian woman at work, and now she is gone. In that moment, I could feel anger rising in my chest. "This is not peace," I said. "This is colonization. They steal our children with kindness." I promised her I would expose the organization that had recruited her daughter, and I meant it. That meeting changed something in me. I took it very personal. I saw myself as a guardian and a protector of the vulnerable. I didn't think I was persecuting anyone. I thought I was defending them. 2 weeks before the debate event, I locked myself in my office. My entire walls were covered with research of Bible verses, Christian apologetics, and historical critiques. I worked 12-hour days. I rehearsed multiple times in front of a mirror. I believed I was doing God's work, and I was ready to do it with my last breath. On the day of the event, I entered the venue wearing a white kandura and black bisht. I started with addressing the Trinity, the divinity of Christ, the reliability of the gospel texts. Then in my speech I said something like, "What kind of religion glorifies suffering?" I pointed to a picture of Virgin Mary on the screen and asked everyone, "This is their Queen of Heaven? A woman weeping over her dead son? This is strength? This is divinity?" "They say she is blessed among women," I continued. "I say she is the greatest victim of Christian mythology, a woman used, worshipped, but never empowered, a symbol of submission." Everyone laughed and chanted, "Allahu Akbar." In that moment, I wasn't aware I had crossed a line. I believed I was standing on truth, but I had done something else entirely. I had mocked the Holy Mother. When my session was over, I went backstage. Religious leaders shook my hand. One elderly imam embraced me and told me that I have defended the Prophet's honor that day. My phone kept vibrating non-stop with messages and notifications from people. I didn't want to take the glory, so I stepped into a quiet corner and prayed, "Alhamdulillah, you have used me for your glory." I believed I had done exactly what I was meant to do. That was the highest point of my life. 3 days later, everything collapsed. 3 nights after the debate, I had a dream. I was back on the stage, but the arena was empty. And then I saw the Virgin Mary, standing at the center of the stage. She didn't speak to me. She just looked at me. I tried to speak. My mouth opened, but no sound came. I tried to move toward her, or away. I don't know. But my legs were frozen. She took 1 step toward me. Then I woke up gasping, my heart pounding, and I was drenched in sweat. I looked at the clock. It was 3:17 a.m. I sat up in bed, trying to calm my breathing. I told myself it was just a dream, but deep inside I knew it was more than a dream. I couldn't shake the feeling. She had been real. 2 nights later, the dream came again. It was the same stage, same presence. But this time she spoke. Her voice was very soft and gentle. "You have mocked what you do not understand." That was all she said. And I broke down. Right there in the dream, I wept. I fell to my knees and sobbed like a child. When I woke up, I was still weeping. Tears had soaked my pillow. I still didn't understand what was happening to me. But I knew that this wasn't stress, and it also wasn't my imagination. Something was breaking inside me and I couldn't stop it. Back to the private dinner I was having with my friends and family. After I collapsed and they moved me to a side room, the doctor did what he could do and left. My friends came around asking if I needed anything. I shook my head, telling them I didn't need anything. I only told them I just needed a moment to rest. When they finally left me alone, I sat in the dark, staring at nothing. My hands were still shaking and I could feel my chest still tight. And one thought repeated in my mind over and over again. She was real and I had mocked her publicly. And she had come to me. I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't know how to process it. But I knew. Everything I had believed about myself, about God, about truth. It was crumbling. And there was nothing I could do to stop it. 2 weeks later, I did something I never thought I would do. I bought a Bible. My plan was not to critique it or to refute it, but to actually read it. I went to a bookstore far from my neighborhood, paid in cash, took it home in a plastic bag. That night, when I was alone in my room, I opened it. I started with the Gospel of John. I don't know why, maybe because I've heard it quoted many times before. I started with chapter 1, verse 1. It said, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." I read it again, and again. Tears came down from my eyes. I didn't understand why, but I couldn't stop reading. I read for hours, chapter after chapter, and then, sometime after midnight, I closed the book, sat in silence, and I prayed, but not to Allah. I didn't know how to address him. I just spoke into the silence. If you are real, show me. And I knew my life would never be the same. 1 month later, I went to my father's palace. I asked to speak with him privately. We sat in the formal majlis, just the two of us. I knelt before him, the way I had done as a child. And I told him that I have accepted Christ as my Lord and Savior. His face became hard. The silence stretched, long, unbearable. After a long pause, he then told me to my face that I am no longer his son. I tried to explain to him and to tell him what had happened, about the dreams, the vision, and the peace I had found. He raised his hand and told me to leave and never return. That was all he said. I stood up and walked to the door, turned back one more time to see his face. He was sitting perfectly still. Then I left, and I have not seen him ever since. Within a week, my bank accounts were frozen. My friends stopped answering my calls. Some of my colleagues sent brief, cold messages that they could no longer associate with me. Then the threats started. Text messages from unknown numbers started coming into my phone. You will pay for this betrayal. Apostate. We know where you are. I realized I was no longer safe, so I packed my bag, took what little cash I had left, and I left the country. I flew to Europe. I arrived in a city I'd never been to before. Found a cheap room, lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling. Everything I had built all my life was gone. My family, my reputation, my work, my wealth, my identity. All of it was completely gone. But the strangest part is that I felt peace, a kind of peace I had never known, even at the height of my success, even surrounded by crowds chanting my name. I had been powerful. Now I was powerless. I had been celebrated. Now I was invisible. I had been certain. Now I was just held. And somehow, that was enough. After a while I got married. My wife is from Jordan. She was also a Muslim who left everything behind. We met at a church for converts and married quietly. Now we both work remotely for a non-profit to help people who have left Islam. Provide resources, safe housing, legal support. I do not miss the palace. I do not miss the power. I miss my father and I pray for him every day. I wonder if he thinks of me and if he prays for me. Or if in his mind I am already dead. But I am free, not because life is easy. It isn't. Not because I have everything I want. I don't. But because I know who I belong to. If you are listening to this, and you have built your identity on defending religion, I want to ask you something. Are you defending God? Or are you defending yourself? I thought I was defending God. But I was defending my pride and my need to be right. And in doing so, I mocked the very God I claim to serve. I don't expect you to believe my story. I wouldn't have believed it either. But I'm telling you, not to convince you or to convert you, just to say, if he can reach me, after everything I did, he can reach anyone, even you.